remember your first word? I want you to think about it in the context of your life's journey from that moment to this one right now. Mine wasn't mama or dada, it was ball. And for me, that could have predicted my life journey. From a kindergartner slash pee-wee power forward to a Division I lacrosse defenseman to a sports marketing consultant, I've woven the very fabric of my life through sport. It's given me my closest friends, my fondest memories, and lessons on life, success, and failure that no class ever could have. And I'm not alone. Sport gives us all something. It gives us healthier lifestyles. It introduces us to new people. It allows us to surround ourselves with those that we love most. And so, think about your relationship with sport for just a minute. Sport benefits us. We extract from sport. And rarely do we ever think of it through any other lens. And I know I didn't. That was until I lived in a time and a place and among a people who can't just take the benefits from sport that we do every single day. It was there in Tel Aviv, Israel, where my sport life fabric turned completely inside out. This past summer, I learned that sport's true potential to build, to create, to maintain lay not in what I could extract from it, but rather in what I could give through it. I moved to Tel Aviv this past summer, and I was able to meet, socialize, and train with the Israeli national lacrosse team as they prepared for the World Lacrosse Championships to be played later in America that summer. Their parent organization, Israel Lacrosse, was also working simultaneously to build lacrosse programs in elementary schools throughout Israel, going from school to school to use it as a youth development tool. Both of these missions were challenged by the onset of the Israeli-Gaza conflict this past summer, an armed military engagement between Hamas and Israel that claimed the lives of over 2,200 people. Now, to give you a sense of everything that I went through on a daily basis while I was over there, just to give you some context, I'm going to read you a journal entry of mine dated Wednesday, July 16th, 2014. This morning, my bus didn't make it 20 feet before a rocket siren went off. This was the first time I was on a bus, but the same surreal feeling instantly went off inside me. Everyone quickly shuffled off the bus and into a cafe and against its outside wall. When I heard the first Iron Dome explosion, I moved under a tree where a younger woman was comforting an older one, crouching under a table, crying. Another boom overhead and more tears. But when the siren stopped, as if the scene was played in reverse, everyone filed back onto the bus and life resumed. Another typical day in Tel Aviv. So for those who are unfamiliar, the Iron Dome is Israel's missile defense system that's so effective at taking out enemy artillery, it has earned the moniker of an Iron Dome blanketing the Israeli sky. Now, while that may seem to evoke a safe image inside all of us, we have to remember that Israelis live in a world that requires an Iron Dome. During this most recent conflict, over 3,500 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. And so my duck and cover exercises from this past summer, from my journal entry, happened to me on average 3 to 4 times a day while I was over there. Again, a typical day in Tel Aviv. Faced with this reality, the Israeli national team continued to train to represent their country. Israel Lacrosse continued to spread the game they love in the country they love. And intermittently, rockets would rain down and interrupt both of these efforts. In the mornings, Israel lacrosse players would train and give their blood, sweat, and tears for their country. And then in the afternoon, after their scrimmages, they would go and join up with Israel lacrosse and continue to give by going from school to school and teaching kids how to play lacrosse, so that instead of thinking about war and death and anger, they instead learned about cooperation and competition and peace. The most amazing things about these practices is that they had to be conducted in 3 separate languages, English, Hebrew, and Arabic, because the students who made up these schools were Christian, Hebrew, and Muslim. We had kids from Morocco, from Russia, from Ethiopia, Israel, Palestine, and beyond. And so while the Rockets that occasionally would interrupt this practice couldn't and didn't discriminate against the different nationalities, religions, and ethnicities, neither did the Israeli lacrosse players. It was really a beautiful thing to behold. So imagine that, an international athletic team, when running for the bomb shelters and the sirens overhead became the norm, teaching a game, bringing Jews and Muslims, Israelis and Palestinians together, picking up sticks and throwing a ball, something they'd never seen or ever done before. Now, if you think about all the analogies between sport and war, their shared structure, the similar emotions that run through them, you might feel a bit of the heartbreaking irony I did one instance this past summer. Coming off the field after a scrimmage in Ashkelon, Israel, which is just 4 miles north of the border with Gaza, I noticed a young Jewish boy pick up a stick, pick up a ball, and start having a catch with a young Muslim boy. And I was transfixed, because despite what was going on around them, the sirens, the rockets, the sprints to the bomb shelters, nothing mattered and nothing was between them except lacrosse, except sport. I often think about that catch, and I think, what if just 1 in 10 of every instance of a Jew and a Muslim coming together through a game of lacrosse, what if 1 in 10 of those started with a catch and turned into laughter, which turned into friendship, which turned into understanding, which turned into sharing stories, which turned into trust, which turned into growing together instead of apart, which turned into peace? So I thought, what if, after the fact, peace isn't best determined through the barrel of a gun or even around a negotiating table? Perhaps the most sustainable path to peace is actually on the athletic field. John Rothhauser was a defenseman on the Israeli national team this past summer. And he wrote an article and submitted to Israel Lacrosse's website that I feel perfectly captures the spirit of what he was trying to do with the organization this summer. John writes, "I credit lacrosse with much of my transformation as a person, having developed its tenets of discipline, leadership, hard work, and accountability. I learned who I was as an individual and how I can contribute as part of a team. And today, as a student and a teacher of the game, I see no context that holds more potential for the transformative powers of lacrosse than an Israeli society where lacrosse is already serving as a catalyst for personal group development and cultural tolerance." That's what I'm talking about. The transformative powers of lacrosse, a catalyst for cultural tolerance. I often think, if I didn't have lacrosse, I may have fewer friends, fewer memories. But if those young kids this summer didn't have lacrosse, they'd have a much larger void. A void that'd be filled with thoughts of anger and hate, confusion and fear. Questions like, where's the closest bomb shelter to where I am right now? Or, will my house still be standing when I get home? Stuff that we don't have to think about ever. And so I think about my friends over there in Israel on the Israeli national team, and I have to say, I'm beyond proud to have stood on the same field as them, even if it was only for a practice or a scrimmage. Because they're over there right now risking their safety and giving. They're literally living the talk that I'm only talking right now. So I thank them. Now, what would a talk on sports on this campus be without mentioning John Wooden? Legendary Coach Wooden has a quote that I think partially encapsulates both my experience over there in Israel as well as a transformation of my sport life fabric. Coach Wooden says, "Success is never final. Failure is never fatal. It's courage that counts." Now, do I think we can solve all the world's problems purely through sport? No. There's always going to be the next at-risk, marginalized youth. There's always going to be the next religious conflict. But there'll also always be sport. And as long as that's true, perhaps we can take sport and help try to attain the unattainable success that Coach Wooden speaks of. Perhaps sport can help mitigate the fatality that failure so often brings. perhaps sport can be the means to the courage required to accomplish both. I started this talk by asking about first words, so now I'm going to leave you with one, a final word: giving. The next time you're with your friends and you're playing basketball or soccer, or you're at the bar and you're watching the big game together, take a moment and think all that sport is giving you right then and there. And then I encourage you to take the next step and think, what if, only one time out of 10, you instead tried to give a little bit instead of just take? From someone whose first word was ball, I've been inspired to try to use my passion to do just that, to sometimes give instead of just take. So, I encourage you to do the same with your passions, no matter what your first word. Because if we all did, our worlds would be that much better. Thank you.